Here we read that Paul, when he talks about following himself, he was in danger of becoming proud. And he says that in 2 Corinthians 12 verse 7. I was in danger of exalting myself. I told you it's a wonderful thing if God gives you light on your pride, on your boastfulness, how you very subtly boast about yourself or your children or your family members, or you boast. You ask yourself for God to give you light on it. There are people who do that and they don't even have the slightest idea that it stinks. It stinks. I tell you, when I hear that, it stinks. My spiritual nostrils revolts against that. I say, this is the smell of hell. The smell of heaven is humility. The smell of hell is boastfulness and pride. And I've seen that in a lot of Christians. I've seen that in the reports that Christians write about the work that they are doing for God. Stinking. I don't know whether you smell hell there. Well, Paul was in danger of it himself. And God wanted to save Paul from getting proud for one reason. And that is, God is the enemy of the proud. And he did not want to be Paul's enemy. God resists the proud. That is written in 2 verses in Scripture. James 4:6. And is repeated again 3 or 4 pages later in 1 Peter 5 verse 5. Why is it repeated there? In case you read past the first mention of it quickly, God repeats it. I don't want you to miss this. God resists the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. You know, this is such an important message that we need to have it in front of us all the time. If you want grace, humble yourself. Never boast. The moment you boast, God becomes your enemy. The moment you try to exalt yourself, God becomes your enemy. The moment you begin to boast about your children, you're going to destroy your children. I'll tell you that. So many Christians haven't understood this. Paul understood it, but he realized that I need God's help to keep me humble. I can try to be humble, it can be very artificial. An artificial humility is something that will make you proud of your humility. And that pride is the worst type of pride, when you become proud of your humility. So God wanted to save Paul from pride for one reason, because God wanted to keep on giving grace to him. And he knew there's a law of God, which is like the law of gravity. You cannot change the law of gravity. Anywhere you go, the law of gravity operates, that the earth pulls down anything. You throw it up, the earth will pull it down. The law of God resisting the proud is exactly the same. It doesn't matter who is proud, believer, unbeliever, servant of God, preacher. The moment he's proud, God's law begins to operate. God pushes him down. Even if it's the Apostle Paul, God, it's a law. For example, if Paul jumped off the roof of a high building, the law of gravity doesn't check up. Is that a believer or not? Let me decide whether to pull him down or not. It operates equally. Believer, unbeliever, spiritual person, Apostle Paul, the law of gravity which God has put into this earth operates equally for everybody. And I want you, my dear brothers and sisters, to understand this law also, God resists the proud, operates in exactly the same way, whether it's unbeliever, believer, Apostle Paul, you, me, or anybody. Once you understand that, you will never want to be proud. You'll never want to boast about anything, because God will become your enemy that moment. He will oppose you, He will oppose you, He'll oppose you. You know, I've seen Christians, and I've observed Christians for 60 years now. And there are some believers, born-again believers, whom I've known for 30, 40 years. I've seen them consistently in our churches for 30, 40 years. And in those 30, 40 years, they have not grown spiritually at all. It's like seeing a 40-year-old man sitting in the kindergarten, learning to spell CAT is cat and BAT is bat. What do you feel about that person? You feel sorry for the poor man. What's he doing 40 years in the kindergarten? That's how I've seen some believers. And I know why. God has kept on opposing them. That's why they don't get any fresh revelation from God. They don't become more Christ-like. They still lose their temper and they still get irritated and upset, and they love money. And they get anxious and worried, and they boast about how much they pray and fast. And every mark of a carnal person, exactly the same as it was 40 years ago, they are in the same position today. Why is that? That guy should have been getting a spiritual PhD by now, but he's in the kindergarten. Because God was resisting him all the time. There's only one reason why Christians do not grow spiritually. God is resisting them. Every time they try to go up, God pushes them down. He pushes them down because He sees some pride in them. He sees they are glorying in something in themselves. And if you realize that Paul was in danger of it, how much more you and me? So he says here very honestly, I was in danger of exalting myself. It's absolutely honest. So how did God humble him? It's very interesting. It says here, God gave him a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan. In other words, God allowed Satan to afflict Paul in some way. So Paul calls this thorn in the flesh in verse 7 a messenger of Satan. Satan gave him some sickness. Now, the reason why God allowed Paul to have this sickness, it says here, is very clearly mentioned, to keep me from exalting myself. So God, like this, were punctured Paul's balloon so that it didn't fly up in the air, brought him down to earth, so that God could keep on giving him grace. So when God breaks you, your inner strength, in some way and humbles you, it's one of the best things that He can ever do for you. He's trying to bring you down to zero so that He can bless you and make you a blessing to others. Don't resist God when He does that, because that's God's way of blessing people, not only in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament too. Because of these fantastic experiences of being taken up to heaven and being used to write scripture and planting churches and the miracles He did, handkerchiefs that touched His body would be put on someone and demons would be cast out and people would be healed. That was fantastic. Because of all these experiences, you know what can happen to a man when he is used by God like that? He begins to get puffed up and he became proud. And Paul is honest about it. He says, I was in danger of becoming proud. That's how we know it was probably some type of eye problem that Paul had, which was so repulsive to people that he said, Lord, can't you get rid of this for me? Why you want me to stand before people and this thing? They would look down on me. This great man of God is having eyes that are leaking all the time. And God said, no, I won't do it. Does God heal every sickness? Here's the answer. No. He does heal many times. I've experienced that myself. But I also know He doesn't heal sometimes. And if He doesn't heal, there's a very good reason for it. Here Paul prayed 3 times. And he would have prayed 30 times if he did not get an answer. Paul was the type of person, there was no rule saying he should pray 3 times. He would pray until he got an answer. He got the answer after 3 times because he was sensitive to God's voice. And God said to him, I'm not going to heal you. You need this weakness throughout your life to humble you, to break you. Otherwise you'll become proud and I'll become your enemy. And Paul, I don't want to be your enemy. I want to keep on giving you grace for the rest of your life so that I can use you mightily all over the world, everywhere, and make you write scripture and do so many wonderful things. But I cannot do that if you become proud. But with all the tremendous experiences you've had and the wonderful ministry you've had, you are in danger of becoming proud. So I have to do something for you. That's why I've given you this. So don't ask me again for it. You will not be healed. But this will keep you humble. Every time you get up to speak with his eyes leaking, you'll be humbled. People will say, this guy can heal the sick. Look at his own face. He can't heal himself. That'll keep you humble, Paul. Don't worry about what people think about you. What people think about you is fit for the trash can. Forget it. What do I think about you? I see, Paul, you're a humble man. And I've decided to keep you humble so that I can keep on giving you grace. I want to ask you, my brothers and sisters, which would you rather have? The appreciation of human beings because you boast to them about what all you have done for the Lord, or you're taken up to the third heaven, or something like that? Or would you rather have zero approval from men, that men, human beings, despise you, but God's grace is upon you every single day, and you have wonderful experiences with God, and He uses you according to His purpose and nobody knows about it?